A group of us at the station started talking about the crime problem. At this station, at WWL, everyone here comes from every single walk of life and every single community, whether it be the 9th Ward, the 7th Ward, Treme, it could be uptown, downtown, people on the West Bank, people on the North Shore. We've all come before and had those conversations in this newsroom about how to approach this topic and what we see in our communities every single day.
I started at WBL TV in April of 1977. Crime's always been a problem here, but I don't remember anything like this. And when you see it can happen anywhere to anybody. I mean, good Lord, how many times have there been problems at the Costco gas line? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Just a lot of different, pictures.
We were all raised together. We had each other. And I love you. My kids is your kids are my kids. As they say, it takes a village. And that's what we did. And Linda was a big part of that tribe.
4 teenagers, a 17-year-old boy and 3 girls, all of them 15 and 16, are in custody for the deadly carjacking of a 73-year-old grandmother yesterday.
How young you are.
I know. Look how good I look there. My hair does.
She was a grandmother, she was a mother, she was a best friend, a supporter, a backbone, a giver. She was kind. She would do anything for anyone, even the worst people that would hurt her.
I heard screaming, like you're about to die sort of scream, like one you don't hear. It's just not a normal scream.
This was a rarity for her to be at the office. She normally just went out and did collections or talked to people, and when she would go to someone's house, she would sit and have coffee. If they needed to go, the elderly people, if they didn't have a ride and needed to go to the store, she would take them.
Witnesses say the woman was caught in her seatbelt and dragged as her SUV sped off on Bienville Avenue.
He got a phone call from his brother, and that's when he called me immediately after. I know he was in distraught and devastation and anger and fear.
An older female had been carjacked and dragged.
I've come to terms with that she has passed. It's still very hard, but the way she passed has outraged me.
All I can tell you right now with regards to the extent of the injury, she was dislodged from the vehicle and her arm was severed from her body.
They knew what they were doing. How can you do that? How can you push an elderly lady out of her car? Linda would have gave them that car.
A bystander was chasing the car, telling them, "You're pulling the woman, stop, stop." He opened the door. He kicked her, tried to kick her loose, but she didn't come loose.
It's not anyone else's decision, but that guy who was driving the car knew what he was doing. She did not deserve to be tortured like that. And no one does.
He didn't know what to feel because just 100 different emotions hit him all at once when he got the phone call from his brother.
Yeah, let them have a moment. Yeah, I'm gonna. What made you want to do the Veal Brothers stories from the first time you heard about it?
I heard about the Veal Brothers stories when we did that story a year ago. I remember one of the brothers being killed initially, and then I remember the other 2 being killed just a few days later. so within a week. And I said, can you imagine all of your children at one time, in 1 week, being taken away from you?
We got a baby. This your big daddy.
You feel like your life is ripped apart. You feel like your soul is torn into several pieces.
We ask that you be with us in this service, Lord, that you would strengthen this family, Lord, my family, that you'll hold us up, Lord. And we thank you for being nice.
It was just such a senseless ambush.
They loved their family, and their family loved them dearly.
But I wanted people to see that, no, these were 3 brothers with 3 family members here with them, their father included and their aunt and uncle, who adored them, who absolutely loved them.
They were each other's best friends.
We would not give up. We would not stop.
A barrage of bullets.
There's been a lot of violence in the city of New Orleans.
They were young men who had futures, one who had a baby that had recently come.
I see you, boy. This who you gonna rely on if something haven't happened to me, man.
We're about just over a year since, unfortunately, you lost all 3 family members in 1 week. A year later, we're sitting here and we have you all in silhouettes. Because are you still living in some sort of fear? Or are you still kind of feeling like that you're in danger because this case hasn't been solved?
Definitely. To know that whoever the perpetrators are still walking around doing whatever, for us to just come out and talk openly about it, it's kind of, it's kind of frightening for us because we don't know what's going on. We don't know who these people are.
I mean, I have good days, and then some days I just can't come out the house. So of course I know that the kids are supposed to bury the parents. You're not supposed to bury your kids.
Can you take me back to that unfortunate day when you learned of the shootings?
I actually got a call from my son because his brothers was on scene. I guess they just was crazy about what had happened.
Brian Veal was shot and killed February 13th at Loyola and Washington in Central City.
He told me that police let his brother bleed out on the street and they wouldn't help him, and he was in hysterical, but he was in jail. I guess they they were so upset with what happened that it was hard to control them. So he called me from jail.
They detained him?
Yeah, both of them.
Did they say why did they detain him?
Well, they were charged with resisting arrest. It should be a normal thing to have hysterical brothers seeing their brother get murdered on the street.
You lose one of your sons and a week later?
Yes.
Was it, can you kind of take us back to that particular day?
Earlier that day, my brother had gone up there to talk to his other 2 sons and the mother about getting everything finalized to bury Brian.
They went to the bank to retrieve the money that I just sent at the ATM, and then they went to McDonald's, and on their way back home to feed their mom and themselves, they were murdered. They were ambushed. The reports were that they jumped out of bushes and behind cars and stuff, and just started shooting them.
So you all are in the midst of planning a funeral for one and now for all 3. What was happening for you all at the time?
We were like spinning out of control. We didn't know what to do. We just said, okay, we need to stop and just take a minute and get this done. And I was just trying to handle it. I would call my brother.
My sister was taking care of everything. I just didn't know what to do.
How were you able to put yourself in that mindset too? Because you also just lost all 3 of your nephews.
It had to be done. I didn't have time to think about myself. It had to be done. They had to be laid to rest.
I just want to debunk the whole idea about, African American men not taking care of their kids and that whole thing. Despite divorce, my brother did above and beyond. above and beyond. It was just a normal thing for him to do what he did, even though they weren't living with him and that type of thing. It was normal. So, you know, there was always that love. Those boys were loved. They were not street kids. They were not castaways. They were not in that realm.
We have a lot of people who are experiencing this sort of crime wave, shootings, carjackings, break-ins, carjackings that have now turned deadly.
Right. Yes.
So I guess some people are asking, what's really left for me here? You know, is it safe for me to live here? Should I go to another parish? What do you think needs to happen in order for people to feel safe living in New Orleans?
Our elected officials need to step up and take control of our city. They've just left our city if it's not a certain area, and it's like we don't matter. But we actually matter. I mean, tourism is not the only thing for a city. That's not the only thing. When your citizens and everything start pulling out and federal dollars will definitely be gone as well, then what?
So I was just talking about, you know, you growing up and all around the corner.
Well, with him growing up around the corner, and you know, there were times, and he told us, maybe not enough food in the house, instability with mom.
Oh yeah.
What did you see in Garland that made you think, you know, that this kid's gonna make it?
Well, because he was always smiling. He always smiled, whether he wanted to or not. You know, he would smile, come over here a lot, you know, to sit down and talk. If I needed something on the computer, you know, I don't care how challenging it was, he did it. You would be surprised at how many hours we said, Garland, I don't understand. Well, okay, all right, I'll do it. And I mean, for hours, he just sit and help me on the computer.
At a time when carjackings were spiking, I took a pretty deep look into the dynamics of that, and I found that the majority of carjackings, end of 2021, the first part of 2022, were being committed by juveniles. We do stories over and over about victims of crime, but rarely do we go to the other side, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to talk to Garland Skipper. Now, just to be clear, Garland was never accused of a carjacking. He did have serious run-ins with the law that landed him in juvenile detention twice.
But one thing I could say about him, he always came around here. He always sat and talked. He never cussed. He was very respectful, very respectful, very mannerable.
What is remarkable about Garland is that he did a kind of self-directed course correction. After a couple of stints in juvenile lockup, including some of the worst, most notorious, dangerous, and violent juvenile lockups.
He could definitely write a book about surviving and having to go on to jail and did his time, and you know, you don't want to see him in trouble.
He took an inventory. He took an internal inventory of where this was heading. He had been through a lot of trauma.
Broad, widespread damage report.
During Katrina, we was here for almost, I don't know, 2 weeks towards a month, waiting on a helicopter, because we was up there around 2nd and Drive.
My heart is heavy tonight. I don't have any good news to really share.
So we stayed, I was up actually the night of Katrina though. It was scary, because you know how, I couldn't go to sleep. They were saying it was devastating, how I could kill people and stuff like that, so it had me kind of scared. And the next day the water came. It wasn't no water that day. The next day the water came, yeah.
That's right. What do you think of that?
I mean, the storm was already enough. Power was out. It was hot in the house. Had to go find food. The store was closed. We was hungry and stuff that day. It was me, my sister, and my 2 brothers, and my mom. But we saw people going in the store, so we went in the store too to go get something to eat. We just had to survive, basically. Yeah, I went to Baton Rouge out of there. And I got arrested when I was 13.
13?
Yeah, it was attempted murder and attempted armed robbery.
What were the circumstances?
With the wrong friends, basically, at the wrong time. We had went to the store and it was like late. So I really actually didn't really know what was going on or what was happening. I was just knew around Gardera, and I know I had to be with them because it got dark and I didn't know my way home. I wasn't carrying a gun though.
I'm sorry?
I wasn't carrying a gun.
Okay, but they called it attempt murder. Somebody fired a shot?
Mm-hmm. According to what they said, yeah.
Okay. Sounds like someone did get shot, right? When you got in that incident in Baton Rouge, an attempt armed robbery, attempt murder, somebody in your pack pulls a gun, shoots a guy, that was not that alarming to you?
Yeah, it was alarming to me.
Yeah.
I wasn't really cool with it.
You were not cool.
But it just that it was dark. I was new around there and I was with them and we was going to a store. My first time going to the store and I didn't know how to get back home and my family wasn't home, so I had stuck with them.
One thing that really struck me as we were getting to know him, you think and hear about programs, when you're locked up in, juvenile jail or found responsible for a crime, you go to, a juvenile detention center for a period to supposedly continue your education, get counseling. He was not getting that kind of help, and he was actually kind of a big insight into what it's like on the inside of JJIC, the Juvenile Justice Intervention Center, as it's now called, Youth Study Center, when he was there. Not getting much in the way of education, not getting much in the way of counseling. How did that experience of, being locked up, juvenile lockup, affect you, impact you? What was running through your mind?
I mean, my 14th birthday now.
Oh, did you? What was the thought? Here's your birthday. Normally, I guess, as a kid, you have birthday celebrations.
No, most of my birthdays, I don't know. I don't really have celebrations for my birthdays. My mom did the best they could, though, but we grew up, I ain't really get my birthday celebrated like that, so I don't really know. It started helping me understand and seeing how the jails and stuff was making other dudes. Like, it felt like it'll break some other dudes the way they just be like messed up. And I knew I wasn't gonna let nobody be able to break me like that and stuff. And try to help other brothers too, though. You either be dead in jail or you be a hustler or something. How do you sell drugs to your own people again and keep the cycle going? Like, trying to fight against all that and the corruption with the system and stuff. That's really hard. But I maintain, man.
It's sad to see someone like Garland slip through the cracks. And I know systems are large and they're bureaucratic and they may not have the kind of mechanisms to look at individuals, but let's face it, New Orleans is a big, small town. We can do this. We can focus on individuals who are in need on a close one-on-one and continuing basis and turn this thing around.
The killing that tied last year's record took place here on Franklin Avenue before dawn. Police say a 37-year-old New Orleans man stopped to use a payphone. He was approached by two men who apparently tried to rob him. One of the men shot the victim twice. He died later during surgery.
Take us back to a time where New Orleans saw a dramatic reduction in crime. What was happening before that reduction? And tell us about some of the things that were done to stem the crime.
You had the pizza kitchen shootings. You had the shooting of tourists. The Big Four housing projects in Central City that had the crack and the turf battles.
This bust here in the B.W. Cooper housing project comes as a result of a 6-week
I specifically remember the 35 people that were killed in the 6-block area in the Callio housing project, man, in 1 year.
By the time Mark Morial got elected in 1994, there were 424 murders in this city. We were being called the murder capital of America.
Our wish and our hope for the new year is to make the community safer, is to bring the murder rate down.
We had council mayor battles back then, but then everybody came together.
Richard Pennington's first full day with the NOPD lasted just over 12 hours.
I think today I got a sense of the feeling of the command staff. Basically, it was a day for me to listen.
There was this urgency where fixing and solving the problem with crime was bigger than our personalities and our political titles and political careers.
We're beginning to turn the corner.
There were many reasons the mayor, after his long search, finally selected Pennington. One of them is he puts his police officers on the street.
Chief Pennington came into a hornet's nest because there was a lot of corruption within the police department. Within a couple of years, there were 2 officers. One officer ordered a hit on a witness, and then another officer killed several people at the Kim On restaurant out in New Orleans East. So, I mean, it was a bad time, and the federal government was talking about coming in, but Pennington started making a lot of changes. He brought science into the mix. He brought in community policing. He had Eddie Compass running community policing at the time. Ronald Surpass, who later became chief, was moved up to second in command. And by the time he left in 1999, the murder rate was under 200.
We all worked together and came up with a plan, the Pennington plan. They bludgeoned murder down, is the truth of it. Arrested lots of people, some correctly and some maybe not.
In the late 90s, when we had that tremendous success, the police department hit its high water mark of more than 1,600 officers, the most ever in the NOPD. Now, we're at the lowest point in the modern era, going back to the 40s, of less than 1,000 officers.
At that time, our understanding of crime fighting was based on essentially broken windows.
It's kind of cracking down on nuisance crimes, whether it be litter or graffiti, because that creates an environment where it seems to give people liberty to step up the scale of criminal activity into more serious crimes. So they stomp out every little single crime, no matter how minor. That is completely out of fashion in favor of constitutional policing. Just because a neighborhood is filled with litter and graffiti, like, you do not swarm, public nuisance crimes.
We've learned so much since then. Crime now really has become very specific. Problem people, 3 to 5% of any population. Problem places, 5 to 7% of street segments. So in other words, instead of casting the net out on everybody like we did in the 90s, which caught a criminal justice footprint in a lot of people's lives that wasn't needed, now we know from science, released again this year, if you focus on problem people in problem places and you exert a qualified, constitutionally sound policing proactive strategy, you will reduce crime, and it's a halo effect. Now we know a narrow net is effective, but you gotta have people to do it, and you gotta have people that aren't tied up in something. I think what happened with George Floyd was a horrific murder caught on television that got everybody's attention. And it should have, and it did, and people went to jail, and they should have gone to jail. But it's been outsized in a political process that's been used to castigate an entire industry. Mothers and grandparents in New Orleans who can't watch their children play in the street is far more important than a political ideology of either side. The villainization of policing over the last 3 or 4 years, I am afraid to tell you, I think has taken hold, right? Not every cop's a bad cop. Not every system's a bad system.
The purpose of Blue at the Zoo was to promote positive interactive experiences with New Orleans police, but Tuesday, Audubon announced it was canceling next week's event, citing feedback from people in the community as well as outside the community who felt the event could be unintentionally divisive rather than inclusive.
How do you tell people that it's okay for the Audubon Zoo to refuse to give you a party after they got a few emails? Let me tell you, that's a seminal moment for me. When I talk to men and women in the police department, put yourself in the mind of a police officer working by themselves at night between the Industrial Canal and Crowder Boulevard and say, are these people really supporting us? Constitutional policing means that you follow the law in how you stop people, how you question people, how you serve warrants, how you do investigations, how you take statements. It is a winner. When I was chief of police in New Orleans, we were no shrinking violets. We arrested 86 police officers when I was chief. When I was in Nashville, we created the first law in decision by the state Supreme Court that if you lie, you get fired. So there's people who are holding police officers accountable, and there's still going to be errors that we just have to find a way to come together. Villainization separates people. Community policing brings people together.
That's when I was chief. That's when I was chief. That's when I was chief. I go to a different area. And so we put a lot more money in social programs. And this is when Vice President Gore came to see me and give me an award personally.
So, in looking at some of the pictures that we just saw, and seeing obviously the impact that you have had on the members of the community, there was an emphasis when you were chief of community policing. Right. How can we, or are we even doing that today within OPD with community policing? How can we bring what you did then to this current police force?
You know, we had a lot of resources from the federal government through the Weed and Seed grants. And we utilize those resources to their optimal efficiency. I wanted a holistic approach on dealing with crime and not just putting people in jail. We didn't look at crime as something that we could solve by enforcement. We looked at something that we could do about it from a preventative standpoint, where if people could get to a certain socioeconomic level, they wouldn't steal, they wouldn't commit crimes. And when we looked at it from the perspective that most of these people that we talked to that had committed crimes, basically they wanted to feed their family, they wanted a better way of life, but they felt that they were against a wall, that they had no way to get a job. So what we did, we got with the Sewage and Water Board, we got with the Electrical Union, we got with the Plumbers Union, the Carpenters Union, and we had like a job fair in the desired housing development. Anybody that wanted a job, we got them a job. We had 10 garbage trucks. We had scores of tow wagons. We had young people come in from these church groups all over the country. We had over 150 volunteers. Desire in Florida looked Disney clean. That development had never been cleaned like that ever before. We had the station actually in the development. That was one of the big advantages we had. We actually had our police station in the public housing development. People thought I was crazy when I asked them to do that.
All of these programs sound amazing. Was there any proof or any way for you to show that this was working, it was effectively curbing crime during that time?
Well, we had a 73% reduction in murders. We had a 26% reduction in overall crime. Vice President Al Gore recognized our program as the top weed and seed program in the nation. When you put fewer people in jail and crime goes down, the programs that we put in place are working.
Right now. We have the perimeter, and we can have everybody else slow down.
Crime up, shootings way up, killings way up. You know, we had our low in 2019 in homicides. Now we're about to break records. What's fueling that?
Probably like ongoing beef with like territories and stuff and with people.
Violent crime has been a huge concern in New Orleans all year.
They uncles or brothers or people might have grew up older too. and already in a conflict with people. So as you being young and part of that generation, it's like a generational cycle.
Locals and business owners say the crime here is out of control.
Different cities have used different models to successfully reduce crime, and Boston is one of the most well-known.
They had a comprehensive network map of all the different gangs of Boston at that time. And they developed a strategy which brought in every unit of government. And they'd bring in housing, medical, they'd bring in psychiatry services, they'd bring in social services, they'd bring in corrections. They developed the circle model of a meeting with the people they suspected of being involved in violent crime. And those often used police data and police intelligence to target those individuals.
So a central component of the Boston model is known as a call-in.
And when they met, they'd look at the young person, they'd say, you've got three choices. One, you go to jail. The second choice you have is dead. You get shot in this gun violence. And the third option you have is change. And we're going to give you all the resources, mental health, jobs, anger management, everything we know that has a track record, and you're going to change. And they reduced both incarceration of these young people and deaths and arrests and murders, which was the most important outcome.
And a key to the strategy was targeting the most high-risk offenders.
There are many models, Boston model, Chicago model. There's CompStat out of New York City that got transplanted to New Orleans. If there was a single plan that was universally successful, it would be used by all cities and all police departments. Shortly after the Pennington plan, we had a meltdown with Hurricane Katrina and then a consent decree that is still in place.
After identifying numerous problems within the NOPD in March, the U.S. Justice Department is set to enter into a consent decree with the city.
We are going to recreate the New Orleans Police Department, and it is our mission to, in fact, create the best department in the country.
Clearly, we need a police department that is big enough with enough officers on patrol that you don't have to wait an hour and a half to get a police response when you call 911. But what is being done to lessen the number and the volume of those 911 calls? Once again, it goes back to, the preventative measures that keep those calls from happening, to give kids, alternatives and some other, things and programs.
With the children's art in the background. My name is Patrick Young. I am the Director of Gun Violence Prevention for the Mayor's Office here in New Orleans. Growing up in New Orleans, been living in New Orleans all my life. The violence in the 90s, my brother was murdered. And that really just changed how I felt about, life in general. New Orleans has this motto, get it how you live. And so instinctively, just being from New Orleans was like, I just want to get a gun to kill the person that killed my brother. That retaliation mindset, being in the feelings of what it feels to know that something that's happened to someone close to you, and you feel like you have to do something about it. I myself would wind up in prison, arrested for armed robbery. So many people I know were impacted by some of those laws that were created in the 90s. There's no treatment, there's no support, you're just doing 85%. I was off for 65 years with no priors, no victims. And it was just how at 19 I'm gonna face 65 years. So there was no path where you can rectify. We just had a young lady last week. She went to college in Texas, so we was excited about that. So this office is the city efforts to address shootings and killings in the city of New Orleans. and to identify what strategies and interventions we can use for prevention to stop those shootings from increasing. So it started with a community organization. There was again, another surge in violence, and people were fed up trying to figure out what to do. There was an organization called Solutions, Not Shootings, and in their advocacy and outreach, they modeled after the Chicago model, which was a ceasefire model.
We are going to continue to have the same thing that we've seen every day since 1979 if we don't dramatically change our behavior patterns in the city of New Orleans.
Then the city administration under Landrieu decided, let's invest in that program and let's see if it worked. And ceasefire started.
Considered one of the city's most violent neighborhoods, Central City is the testing ground for Ceasefire New Orleans, a Chicago-inspired initiative launched here this spring.
After that, ceasefire changed its name to Cure Violence. When Mayor LaToya got elected, she had a meeting with some advisors, and they were trying to figure out, well, what's the thing that we can do in the long term to try to prevent crime and violence from happening? And one of the things that was identified is that we needed a specific office to address just the shootings and killings in the city. The office has actually 4 different programs. One is our community crisis response team, which essentially is an evolved output of what the Cure Violence model was. We've evolved that into just community crisis response, where we respond to hospital scenes and shooting scenes. Secondly, we have our Jumpstart program, which works with youth 16 to 24 who are not in school, disconnected from job opportunities, may have had some run-ins with the law. We also have our CEO program where we work with people who are formerly incarcerated. And then lastly, we launched the first ever Barbers and Beauticians Collective Fellowship, which provides peace ambassadors in the community.
We see program after program pop up, it's the flavor of the week, and then it gets derailed.
Jumpstart is now ending its relationship with the city, and other programs may come to a sudden halt too, as questions swirl about a nonprofit that funds them.
Now, we're looking at questions about a nonprofit that the mayor started, which under its umbrella has many positive programs on paper, but caught in bureaucratic entanglement and yet again, promising programs derailed.
We just find that right now, the psychology of violence is your inability, it's a reaction to your inability to control your emotions. That's what we do know. And what we do know is that when you ask people what's happening after the fact, they say something made them feel a way. And if you're not able to control your feelings or emotions, and you haven't been taught that, and you haven't been trained in that, we can expect a violent reaction, similar to when kids have temper tantrums. We saw in the news recently a young lady who was bullied in school. She felt that in order for her to stop this bullying, I have to get a gun and go and address the problem. The thinking that that was okay is the problem. We have to change that type of thinking in all situations.
There are some people who will say that we can study the why and we can talk about the root causes, but we basically have a patient on the table that is bleeding out and we need to do triage. Like right now they say we don't have time to study. We need to figure out what's happening right now. Is that just?
That's fear. And it's if this was a quick fix, we would have fixed it a long time ago. If it was just about policing, we would have fixed it a long time ago. Louisiana led the nation in incarceration. If it's just about locking up folks, we would have solved this a long time ago. The underlying causes remain unanswered. And so until we get to those underlying causes, we're just gonna keep having more pockets of rise and falls.
Grief is a strange beast.
I wake up every morning, not knowing what to expect during the day.
My skin has been on fire since that phone call. My sleep has been scarce, and I've had nagging headache, and my appetite comes and goes.
Nothing about my life is the same as it was prior to this happening.
I remember thinking this when I came here, covering criminal justice and crime, that split-second decisions to pick up a gun, use a gun, alter people's lives like so gravely forever. The victim, the shooter, if they get caught. Why is there such a, I don't know, I guess, quick move to make that split-second decision to pick up the gun and use it instead of, you know, intellectually, you know, people are taught resolve
because
things
most people that
peacefully.
they probably raised by, saw or grew up around, that's what they saw. Most people solve the conflicts like with guns because either they don't know how to fight or talk things out.
Now I've seen you play the role, I call you the philosopher, but kind of peacemaker, calm people down. How can you and others take that message to take a step back, resolve things peacefully, or find a different way?
Well, the only way you could do that and even be able to resolve something peacefully with somebody is be able to gain a certain trust with people because they already been through, like we already been through a lot, so trust issues already hard with going through things with our own families and stuff, not being able to trust people closer to us. So that makes the effect harder on trusting, you know, people outside of the community and polices and things like that.
So trust is a big hurdle.
Yeah, trust is a key thing to every living thing that exists on this planet. Even animals. If they don't know you, they ain't gonna come to you, they gonna run. So everything is built on trust to me.
You're just full of wise words today, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, man.
You're welcome.
Serious.
If there's anything that you could say directly to the city administration, NOPD, anyone watching this, what would you have to say to them?
Get help. Don't try to camouflage this and make us believe you gonna get this in control and create opportunity for these young adolescents. Create programs to help get these kids off the street.
What happened in the 90s, it was a daily emergency, and they were going to do absolutely anything and everything to address it.
It really needs something done around here.
Everybody got together and said, you know what? The only way this is going to be fixed is if we do two things. Fight crime and deal with the disparities.
You empower them by, first of all, letting them know that you're concerned about their living conditions, the quality of life, and in addition to that, you get them to start cooperating, and they know who the drug dealers are, they know who the individuals are that are shooting, committing and reaping havoc on the community.
The business community got together like a couple summers in a row and hired almost 2,000 kids. They raised funds for almost 2,000 kids. Murrow had one of the most aggressive summer internship programs, working with Chevron, working with the Business Council, working with the Chamber, doubled the budget for the Recreation Department.
In the past, we've had different organizations that dealt with gun violence. Previous administration had the whole NOLA for Life team. And so how do we stop it just from passing from administration to administration without addressing what are the root causes?
My aunt, Linda Fricke, was an amazing person. Aunt Linda made friends easily. She never met a stranger and had the gift of gab.
She started screaming and running because
her life was stolen from us in the most horrendous manner imaginable.
There is something really wrong.
4 teenagers accused of killing.
We have to find a way to collectively come together. There's no other way of putting it. There's no politics involved. There are no personal feelings involved.
This is unprecedented.
They can't do it. They can't do it. You know, look at how bad things have really gotten.
I've never lost sight of the fact that every crime has a victim.
Rest in peace. In heaven, where she'll be happy and look down on us and be happy.
It's just a painful moment. You know, every day is just a painful moment.
That's what this is about, people who have been victimized.
You know, I'm sure just like that lady the other day, going about her life, and how she was drugged out of her own car.
People who have lost their lives.
I don't know how to move on from here, and I know that because the wound of losing her is still fresh, I won't know for quite some time.
People who can't park their car in a neighborhood without looking over their shoulder.
I just feel like it was like too, like it was just too soon for her to die.
I can't want anything decent because I have to fear you're trying to take it from me.
All right. You want to get one more big kiss to Mama?
Aunt Linda would want me to be happy, and so I know that eventually I will have to be happy again. She would want me to live fearlessly as she did, and I know that that is what I'm going to have to do.
You ready? And kisses to Mama.